Next up, we're going to look at making a shield or some sort of blocking device for our player character, so that as he's going through, if he's got needing to defend himself a little bit, he can actually put up a shield, and that'll kind of block things for him. So we're going to go to our player script, and in the player script, we're going to go in and add some more variables. We're going to give one for the designer. Let's say for the designer, we need to say one thing. It could be how long does the shield last, or maybe how many times can they actually use the shield before it goes away. So let's do number, let's say number of shields. SHIELDS, there we go. And this is just going to be an integer variable. And let's start it off with maybe 4. It's just the number of shields the player gets to use. Go ahead and copy that out, just make it easy while we get down to here. Now we're going to store this just inside of our update function, and we could even rip it out if we want to and make it a separate function, just run it in the update. But for now, we'll go ahead and just put it down here where we're getting some of our input. So here we're saying create a bullet if the key such and such is pressed. So let's go below that one and say create a shield. And what do we want to do? We want to check for input. So input dot get key down. And what key do we want to use? We've got the space bar, we've got our arrow keys. Our left hand is sort of open, so maybe Q or W or maybe E. E might be a nice one. So let's say E. So if we press the E button, then what are we going to do? What we want to do is we want to be able to load up this this spherical shield that's going to go around our player. So let's go ahead and go back up. We've got a number of shields. Let's also load in our shield. We'll call this just our shield object or mesh. And this will be our transform. And let's see what else we've got. That'll get us set up so that we can load our object in. Load shield mesh. And we can use that shield mesh right down here. So we're going to do the same thing, kind of like we do even with the bullet. We're going to be basically instantiating this object, and it's going to be instantiated around our box to give us that shield. So let's go in and just say instantiate. So we're going to instantiate what? This is going to be our shield mesh. And where are we going to instantiate it? We're going to instantiate it at the current transform position and transform rotation of our player object. So the transform position and the transform rotation dot rotation. This is just putting that object right where our object is and gets it set up real nice right in there. So our transform rotation position, if we select on our object over here, we'll go ahead and just select on it from our project, and we look in here, we've got the shield mesh. So we don't have a shield mesh right now, so let's go ahead and create that. Let's go in and let's just create a brand new object. We're going to make a new material for it. Material shield. Let's make a new prefab that we're going to be using. So prefab shield. And does our shield need any additional information? Yes and no. We can make some additional information. It'll just depend on what we want to do with it. We know we're going to have it last a certain amount of time and have some sort of health to it so that if it gets hit a number of times by these objects, that then it actually goes away. So we're going to need a script file for our shield. So we'll say a JavaScript. And let's go ahead and get that set in. Let's go ahead and pull this down a little bit, give us some more space for it. So we've got our shield parts and pieces ready. Now let's actually make the geometry of it. We'll go in our hierarchy. We'll make a sphere. And let's just reset this to 0, 0, 0. And let's increase the scale of this object just enough that we actually go all the way around the object. There we go. So that's going to get us around the object. We're going to need to go back to our material. We'll sign that on over. And what color do we want this to be? We can make this maybe like a blue or a turquoise kind of color. That'll work for us. And let's make this with a little bit of transparency right now. There's no alpha in this one, so we're going to go to a transparent shader. And in our transparent shader, we've got just diffuse, specular, whatnot in here. So let's just go for our regular just diffuse bumped. And we'll just go our diffuse. And it's looking for a shader in here. We're going to go in, we're going to set our alpha down a little bit low so we can still see our player on the inside. But we do get the sense that there is a transparency on our shape. And because I like values a little different, I'm just going to go 2.5, 2.5, and 2.5. There we go. And let's go ahead and select in on our player object here. Set this one to 0. There we go. Alright, so we have a shield created. A nice little transparent object. This is what we're going to use to defend our character. And I'm going to take my sphere. Let's go ahead and label this out to our shield. And let's just drag our shield over to our prefab. There we go. We've got our prefab set up. It's got our material on there. We just need to drag in our shield script. There we go. So we got our script on there. We've got our material on there. And now what we need to do is also assign that object to our player object, because we can go ahead and get rid of it from our scene. We don't need it in the scene anymore. We'll delete that. And on our player, we'll go in here. We've got the shield mesh that we want to load, so we'll take our prefab and just drag and drop that right inside of there. We'll go ahead and apply that back out to our prefab. And what do we have set? We've got E, so let's go in there and hit play. Let's just see what that does for us. If we go in and we hit E, does it create anything for us? No, but it does give us an error. What does it say? It says input key named E is unknown. So we need to actually use a variable that it's going to know. So if we go in here and we say not E, then what can we use? We're going to use our get key down. And let's just move up a little bit so we can get to our window. We'll say, okay, well, what does get key down let me and not let me do? Let's see if we can find some of the restrictions on it. So it's looking for a key code. So the key code is something built in that we could use. So key code dot space. Let's do this instead. This will be fun. We'll actually go in and we'll take our key code and we'll make that a variable that we can use inside of the inspector. So let's go back to our script. And we're going to say variable. We'll do shield key input. So what are we going to use for our shield key input? This is going to be our key code. And we'll save that one real quick. And let's look in our inspector. We see, look, we've got a shield key input, none. But now if we click on it, we have access to all the different keys that are available to us. Let's go in there and set one that we want to use. We'll say the E key. Then we're going to take our shield key input, and we're going to just drop that one right into here. So we're going to do dot shield input, and save that one out. And just make sure we've got it set up right. We've got the input keycode dot space using keycode because it's a preset key in there. This will be more fun so we can actually do it on the designer side. And double check what's our error. We go in, input, shield key input. Let's go ahead and make sure that we've got that set up just right. So let's take a peek back at what we've got set up. Oops. Nice little mistake right in here. Let's just put that into our breaking it off there, and let's see. Yeah, we should be good to go. There's our circle, but when we move, it doesn't follow us. So we're setting objects here, which is interesting, but it's not really the effect that we're going for. So what we want to go for is we want to be able to have that follow our object. We want it to be basically linked to this object. So how do we work with something being linked to something? Let's look at parent. So we're going to go back in. We'll see transform.parent. And we say, okay, well let's just parent it while the game's running. So if we look through here, we see, okay, this is how we can kind of do it, parent, transform. And we're looking in here, we see that we can do a camera, transform.parent equals transform. So it's being parented to an object. This detaches the transform from its parent. So transform.parent equals null. So with our object and with our script file, we want to be able to instantiate this object, but then parent this object to our player character. And we'll set that up next.